Okay, well, thanks for staying with us. We've got two fantastic panelists now. We've spent the last session talking a little bit about freemium, and which is a fascinating area. We're going to drill down a little bit more into that because these two guys are really at the sharp end of that marketplace. So we have David Steinberger to my left. He's the CEO of Comixology. And I'm also joined by Michail Katkoff, who's the monetization manager for Rovio. Some of you might have heard of Rovio. Some of you might even have played Angry Birds. In fact, I doubt if there's one of you out there who hasn't played Angry Birds. Probably easier to look at it that way. So I think that you have a couple of slides for us, Michail. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically there.
Yeah? So I don't know where the clicker is.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
This one.
That's it.
Can we go with that way, that if we discuss more about freemium model, then I can show the slides, but otherwise I think it would be better to start with discussion overall.
Okay. So Rovio's kind of the poster boy, yeah. flag waver, whatever metaphor works for this. Give us a backstory to how it all came about. I think probably everybody knows a little bit about the background of Rovio, but how you really finessed the freemium side of it.
Well, basically, when talking about games at Rovio, we have both paid games mostly, but at the same time on Google we're moving heavily with free-to-play base. So how it all started? Well, naturally we started off with the paid version, as you all know, the $1 or 79 euro cents version, and basically the strategy was that we have two versions. We have the light version, which is the free version, which is sort of like a tasting menu pack, and you upgrade the users from that one to the paid version and get the $1 out of the users, and at the same time grow our fan base and keep providing more and more interesting and engaging content to that paid version. Currently, the market has been radically changing in the sense that when you look at the best apps, on best grossing apps on App Store, you can see that the most of them, 9 out of 10, are usually free to play. So the freemium is where it's going at, and naturally we're also investigating that possibility. And at the same time, on Google Play, for example, our games are usually free. We do have a sort of a premium version of every game, but mostly the ones that are downloaded are free. So in that sense, we monetize our games strongly by working together with different kind of ad partners, using advertising heavily with user engagement and monetizing our games. And adding to that, we're moving steadily towards in-app purchases, where our users can not buy more content, but mostly buy shortcuts in their gameplay and enhance their gameplay with in-app purchases.
It should just come on.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So you're segmenting your approach differently for Google versus Google Play and Android versus iOS.
Not directly. It sort of started happening, and it's evolved, and currently it may feel like that. So we do have free versions both on iOS and Android, but the popularity of the free versions on Google is so big that it totally overshadows the paid version, which is not the case on iOS. So it's not intentionally, but it might seem like that.
So can you just spell out for us exactly how these light versions work? Because are some of them literally cut down versions, and if you want the full version, you upgrade? Are some of them full versions but have ads all the way through them?
Yeah.
I mean, what different types are there?
Currently, for example, on iOS, we do have the cut down version. So in the sense that if we're talking about Comixology, then it would be like the first chapter. So we want to start off with the story, because the story is really important with Rovio, and we want to start by introducing the characters, introducing the stories, and really get our fans engaged into the gameplay. And naturally, when they progress through the first chapter, let's say it that way, we offer them the possibility to continue the story by turning premium and buying the app, which itself will have more and more updates, so it lives through years, actually, our apps, and has these multi-million fan bases and user bases.
So on Apple, do you have a full version that's got ads in that's free?
Currently, no. So on iOS, we have cut down versions that are that are sort of free versions, and the premium versions are the one that have the full version. So it is in the sense different. On Play, on the other hand, on Google Play, we do have full versions that are ad funded, and we have premium versions that have some little bit more content than the free versions. But again, they are overshadowed.
And could you I don't know if you're allowed to, but can you explain to us how many, what the percentage is in terms of downloads between these different types of these versions?
Well, I can't go directly to the percentages, as you know about that, but I would say on Google it's a huge majority that takes the ad-funded version. But then again, on Play Store, we have a lot more possibilities to use different kind of ads that will monetize the app much better than on iOS. On the other hand, on iOS, we have very it's kind of crazy when you look at those free apps that have the limited content, but they have so many users that are coming back and just enjoying those few rounds and trying to perfect their gameplay. So on that side, the difference is not that big actually. So a lot of people are using the free version still.
And lastly, what is it that's driving the different behaviour of Apple and Google users? Is it that it's just a frictionless payment experience on Apple, or is it more of a demographic? I'm going to come to you in a minute.
Yeah.
So
I wish I would have a clear answer to that. I switched myself to Android like a couple of weeks back.
Well, wait a second. So you don't have an iOS app that's the complete experience with ads.
Yeah.
But you do on Google. So somebody over there at Rovio said, these guys behave differently on Android. We can't get them to buy anything. So let's monetize them the way we can. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but somebody over there had to have said that.
Yeah, you're in the
and
sense
that the
you're
iOS
right.
guys obviously are willing to pay some more money.
Exactly.
And we don't want to spoil it by putting a full version on iOS.
Yeah, you're putting words in my mouth, but we've tested all kind of solutions, and we have tested the cut down versions on Android, and currently we're taking the solutions that we have.
Do you get any grief from your consumers saying like, so I'm an iOS user. What the hell? I mean, why can't I?
No,
they don't even know, right? They're completely segregated user groups. That
I
don't
do think
about
that people know, because we get a lot of really good feedback, and we really listen to our users. But we don't really get that kind of feedback. We do get feedback for all kind of monetization, be it a $3 price on iPad, $1 price on the phone, and people asking for universal pricing. But I've never seen actually a comment where people would be complaining, and I do believe that there are a lot of people that have both Android and iOS devices. So I've never seen that.
It's tempting to say that it's a demographic thing and that iOS users all work in ad agencies and have trendy haircuts. But at the, when I get off the train in London, sometimes there's a guy with a big sign that's saying kebabs this way, and he's got an iPhone 4. So I'm sure the demographic difference is melting away. So anyway, we come to you. So can you tell us a little bit more about Comixology? It's an incredibly successful company. Tell us about your business model and what you do.
We're a quieter success than Rovio, but last year we powered 3 of the top 20 grossing iPad apps in the US, number 11, number 15, number 19. This year we'll probably have 2 in the top 10 for top grossing iPad apps. We're a digital platform for comic books, and we both power a multi-publisher application where it's a bookstore and a reader called Comixology, or we call it Comics by Comixology. So if you see an app called Comics, that's us. We also power Marvel Comics platform and DC's. It's all part of the same thing, DC Comics platform. So in the US, that's a good 80% of the print market. And we probably have another 15% or so more in terms of the smaller publishers. So Wednesday's New Comic Book Day in the US will be usually the top grossing iPad app in the US on Wednesday afternoon, sometimes into Thursday. We're the top grossing iPad app in France, almost always, for book apps, I should say, in France, rather than all overall. So we actually started also as a paid model now about 3.5 years ago because Apple required it. this is ancient history now, but Apple actually required anyone who was using in-app purchases to sell the app as well. They let go of that after a few months because it was pretty clear that, especially if you're selling a store or if you're a store application like we were, it was important, just like iTunes is free, to give away the store and get people engaged in some content there, and then to sell the paid content from there. So we have an enormous amount of material. I think we're about 30,000 SKUs. Just a couple of months ago, we announced that we had passed 100 million downloads of comic books through the platform. So it's enormously successful, and we have a lot of free content, and have experimented quite a bit on time-based free content. For instance, Marvel Comics generally doesn't keep the same stuff that's free every week. They change it just about every week. So people keep coming and engaging with the app. We also, unlike Rovio, encourage registration so that we can get customer contact and we can directly touch them and directly communicate with them about other comics they might like. But I will say demographically, Android users are about 3 times more, let me put it this way, 3 times less likely to pay than iOS users. And that's just a flat stat for us. Nothing to say about the type of person, but I think you're much more likely, at least in the US, to walk into any telecommunications store, any cellular store, and they're gonna, if you want the free one, you're likely to get Android. And those guys are looking for a phone, not for an app experience.
So just for the people who aren't acquainted with your product, can you just walk us through, again, the consumer experience? And so they've downloaded your app and they're on a store and they have the option to browse how much material and how
about
much of it is free?
30,000 SKUs. So yeah, we made a real breakthrough about a year ago in terms of how to navigate the store. So when you open up the Comixology application, you're presented with a feature page very similar to what you'd see in iTunes or Google Play or anything else. So it's a very familiar experience. We try to keep it that way. But one of the things we did very, very well last year with our 3.0 platform is multifaceted browsing. So for comic books, there are creators, publishers, storylines, characters, all sorts of different ways to sort the material and browse the material and look for stuff. And we have an entire section just dedicated to free, and so we try to keep the most popular. For instance, The Walking Dead is starting to be a huge international sensation, one of our best sellers. You can get the first issue for free. And for the content, I think it's a lot like gaming, actually. If you've picked the free portion of the book or an entire book, and comics lend themselves this way because the end of a 22-page comic book is a cliffhanger for the next book. And so it's very natural to give first issue free and leave somebody, if they've gotten engaged, wanting the next thing because something has happened at the end of that book to try to push them along. So what we did that was special is we made a reading experience that was made for both larger devices and mobile devices, what we call guided view. And that's had a real tremendous impact on the industry and really powered our partnerships with publishers because they love the way that our app handles their stories when we translate them into the small versions, as well as just a tremendous amount of content. So we're really, the only that I know of digital comics platform that's doing any kind of business at all, and it's really pretty good.
So people download your app. They've got loads of content to look at. Lots of it's free. If they decide that they read the first chapter and they're interested in more, what sort of price points are you charging? And
so
how many of them do that?
Right. So generally, the way comic books work is a couple different ways. So they're released on a monthly basis, the new books. So in the U.S., like I said, that's Wednesday, and those are generally $2.99 or $3.99. A month after that, a lot of our publishers are dropping the price $1, so $2.99 or $1.99. And then anything older than like 6 months generally is $1.99 for the big publishers, and 99 cents for a lot of others. So we have a tremendous amount of 99-cent and $1.99 comics. They also then collect those comics every 6 to 10 issues into what are called trade paperbacks, what we call collected editions, because trade paperback doesn't mean anything on an iPad. And those are a little more premium price, but still at a discount to picking up every single individual issue. So that might be $10 or $12, what's really amazing is if you look, which is kind of fun, if you're interested in in-app purchase content and you want to see what's working, what's not working. So if you're a game maker, for instance, if you look at Rovio, or if you look at Clash of Clans, which has been just an enormously successful app that's been sitting at the top of the grossing iPad list for months, I think now. Just incredible success. You can actually look at the top in-app purchases through the iTunes Store. And if you do that through a desktop computer, you can see the top 25 in-app purchases. And generally speaking, you're talking only a few days worth of data there, as far as we can tell. But you can look at ours, for instance, and you can see the myth of people only want to spend $1 or they only want to spend $1.99 just completely destroyed, because you're going to see the Walking Dead collected editions at $10 and $12 all through our top 25. And so very premium content. And I think you guys have seen success, because I see the biggest complaint for you guys as well. Like, I was looking at the Star Wars edition because it looks cool. And I noticed first that you had in-app purchases, and I was like, wow, that's interesting, you know, these kind of upselling. But then I also noticed in the comments, the most consistent critique was, why is this not universal? And so you have to buy a 99-cent version or a cheap version for the iPhone, but you have to buy a $3 version or something like that for the iPad. And that's an interesting thing, but if people are willing to do that. So the HD quality of the iPad gives the value to the app different than on the iPhone. Now, we don't do that kind of segregation, because one of our core values is you buy it on iOS on the iPhone, you can read it on your Android, you can read it on the web, you can read it on, Windows 8. We have a preview app for that. So we can't pull that off. But clearly, there are different ways to segment that too.
So the title of this topic is, do freemium users pay eventually? So do they? I mean, how many of your users just never buy anything?
Is that to me?
Yeah, to David first,
okay.
quickly, yeah.
So it depends, again, on the platform. It depends on the time of year. Really interestingly, we had a huge, you had the Avengers this summer in the movies, right? You had Dark Knight in the movies. You had Amazing Spider-Man in the movies. We had a pretty tremendous summer in terms of content and people being driven towards that kind of content. So, we have, I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but it's probably 20% for us, which is huge, which is really a big number for most people. But very different on Android, right? So again, Android people will do 3x the amount of free downloads than paid.
Okay. Now, as we've touched on in the previous sessions, an incredibly important part of this is the payment flow and keeping that frictionless. We know that when you're on the Apple Store, that's pretty straightforward. Outside of there, what are the best ways to get people to pay? I know that you guys have your bad piggy bank thing. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, of course, we have different kind of projects that are around the making the payment as clear and as smooth as possible. So that's naturally the key for it. So, but overall, just talking about what makes people pay, I think the most important part of it, apart from having really clear and secure and I mean honest flow, is just the fact that you have to create the demand, and when the demand is big enough, the players will do almost everything, or the fans. I mean, they will give the information, and if they feel that it's a secured way, then they will pay it. So it's I think it more in a way creating the demand. If demand is not strong enough, then of course, no matter how good the payment flow or the payment window is, you won't get the payment in. So.
Yeah, but you're gonna lose users if the payment flow is not smooth. So can you tell us a bit more about your own payment system, this piggy bank system?
Well, currently we haven't launched anything, and then the piggy bank system is still one of the projects that we're developing. So there's really nothing to tell more about that. So, but yeah, I mean it's usually when you look at any platform.
Yeah, we were talking backstage that so first of all, I think that Android is nearly as Google Play is nearly as frictionless as Apple. And in fact, in a lot of ways, have a lot of more options, and perhaps that's where they have friction by offering a lot of different payment methods. But once you sign in with Google Wallet, it's really pretty much the same thing. I could say that for the Kindle Fire as well. Their in-app purchases on Amazon are very, very similar. You get to use the ID that you have. You can do anonymous purchasing or not on all platforms. Of course, we power our own on the web. And I think there's a lot of, everybody wants HTML5 to be, or mobile apps on HTML to be the winner here, right? At least small businesses or businesses in general, because obviously you're paying 30% to Apple, and nobody yet has been bold enough to say, well, we want to attract more developers, so we'll change that to 15%. That's a hint to any Windows or Android or any program that's struggling to get the amount of developers. It helps to pay more. But everybody just went straight 30%. As far as I know, everybody that uses it. But sticking PayPal or trying to force credit card payment when there's an option already there to use your Amazon account, your iTunes account, your Google Play account, really, really difficult. First of all, you can't do it on most platforms. They won't even allow you to. But second, you're taking more steps, right? So HTML5 would be great, but we were talking backstage. Like, I see the 30% we have to give to these platforms as marketing spend, right? It really lives in that area. It should live in that area of the balance sheet if it's not. I mean, in the cash flow and P&L, because otherwise, I mean, there hasn't. And this is an interesting challenge. Maybe this is an opening for somebody, but there is no app store for HTML5 mobile apps. There's no one gathering all those people together in one place to make your investment in HTML5, which we're obviously doing, pay off the way it can through an app store. I mean, it is incredible the amount of traffic that Apple can push your way by featuring you. And I think Rovio even more than we have, Angry Birds has seen a ton of promotion every time they've released anything. We've been very happy with Apple's attention on us as well. And there's just no way to garner that kind of attention in the right place like you can by cooperating in a major way with these platform providers. So I could take the apps out. I could do what Amazon does, right? So this is a great thing. Amazon, there are a lot more comic books periodicals starting to be released on the e-tailer platforms, Amazon, iBooks, the Nook for Barnes & Noble. I think Kobo even has some comic books. And none of them are getting any traction because you can't jump onto your Kindle app on the iPad and buy a comic book because Amazon doesn't want to sell through the in-app purchasing program at Apple because they have to give them 30%. Well, we set up our business model to work with all of these partners, and we continue to be by far, in the thousands of a percent higher sales rate than any of the bigger platforms because it's convenient, it's trustworthy, it feels good, and you buy once and you can read it anywhere you want, where in fact you can buy anywhere you want and read anywhere you want, unlike other platforms that have to kind of garden themselves out or wall themselves off to the in-app purchase programs of their competitors.
But what about the millions of users who don't have credit cards? I mean, are you looking at operator billing as a way of charging for small amounts? I mean, I know that that experience is not always great because sometimes it involves sending a text message to a user and them clicking on a link, but it's still bringing in people who don't have other payment methods.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting part about monetization, especially at Rovio, because we have a very, very big user base or fan base that has a lot of younger audience and children playing it. So the way we see a monetization, we see it in a bit bigger view in the sense that we don't necessarily target only the in-app purchase and direct payment. For us, the fan base is extremely important, and pleasing and delighting that fan base is the number one priority. So, of course, now we try to monetize that through in-app purchases, through the payment of the app. But on top of that, we have a merchandising line that really caters to the fans. So it's really important for us to keep the users there, keep them engaged, and keep them coming back. And if we're talking about really small purchases, for example, if we would have power-ups and that kind of little things that make the gameplay better and more interesting, we can also use ad-funded ways to provide players with this kind of stuff. So daily bonuses sponsored by some big company. We can have in our store small packages of special goods, virtual goods that are daily changing and that then can be accessed by just watching a quick video. And different kind of user initiated ads are definitely the stuff that we're looking for that are sort of a good fit to the whole experience, and make it possible to access those smaller price points.
Google Play, by the way, does do carrier billing, so you can choose that as an option. Carrier billing generally is still very expensive. You know, it's much worse than giving 30% up in a lot of cases. It's interesting. I mean, in a lot of ways, you have to partner with other people that are going to keep up with that technology. I mean, I don't want my team creating a huge billing platform, right? And it's just not a useful. It's not a good use of their time, and we should be working on, you know, better reading experience, better shopping experiences, you know, getting on the platforms that are going to be marketplaces, and making sure that we continue the lead that we have. To spend a whole lot of time on making sure that our mobile HTML app, which is going to be hard to find in the first place, has carrier billing, you know, then you're cutting up the pie even further, because you're going to have to partner with other people for third-party billing. You're going to have to partner with, you know, a carrier that may take more than 30%, et cetera, et cetera.
When Apple first made available the option of subscriptions, which obviously enabled companies like you to flourish, there was a lot of dispute around who owned the data and how much Apple were going to keep. Has that all been resolved now, and how does that work for you
We
guys?
actually don't use Apple's subscription, and the reason is that comic books are an artistic form, and we don't control the release dates for our partners. And so, for instance, The Walking Dead's a great example. In 2011, they came out with 10 books, not 12. So what happens when their subscription is time-based. So what happens when you get your monthly subscription, yet the content hasn't come out because Robert Kirkman and his artist took 6 weeks instead of 4 to get it done. So the model really doesn't work for us. It's not a unit-based subscription. We're looking deeply into subscriptions, but it's not going to be through any in-app provider because they don't provide the kind of flexibility we need. But yeah, it hasn't resolved itself. I mean, what happens is the user gets to opt in if they want to. But we use a lot of techniques. We're about to release a really great feature that, for instance, will require you to have an account with us. And what we find out is that the minute somebody understands when they bought something on their iPhone, they can read it on their Samsung tablet on a totally different OS, or on their Surface machine for Windows, they start spending more money, like immediately. Once they figure out we're on 2 different platforms, that's it. They're in, because it feels good. It feels like very, very much like a purchase, that they own it and can read it exactly where they want to. And anyway, yeah, that's actually my whole point.
Even though it's not a purchase, it's just a rental from you, really, isn't it?
It's like music and DVDs that you buy from the store. Yeah, it's a licensed model.
Yeah. Have we got any questions? I think we've got about 15 minutes left. So, anyone?
There's someone right there. She was right here.
Hello, my name is Nathalie Bouillet from CompuWare. It's a SaaS company. If I may share my own personal experience, I would be happy to pay for an app if I could do in the first place what was intending to do with a freemium version. And very often I can't do what I intending to do because the application is too slow. So how do you make sure that whatever the device, whatever the location, whatever for all the users in reality, that they can access the application and are happy with the experience they have? Or do you have to wait that they tell you that they're unhappy?
Can you give a specific example of where you experienced this?
It's just so slow that you just leave the application and never come back.
Are you being specific to?
It's more, no, it's not
generally.
To you. Generally, on e-commerce applications, when you try to buy things through a mobile.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, yeah, the user experience is so incredibly important. In fact, I can give a personal example of this, that we, when we first started out, we didn't expect it's funny how we were bootstrapping when we released the first version of our app, and Marvel and DC weren't on it and all that. And the way that we built the app was such that you had to download all of the data for every single comic book we had in the store in order to run the app. that was fine when there was like 80 books or 100 books, but when it got to be 5,000 and 6,000 and 7,000, you could open up the app and you'd have to wait, a couple of minutes before you could see the store and the new content. And so Wednesdays were a real drag for a lot of people. And we were very lucky that we had one of the best experiences still, that people would open up their iPads, set it on the table, and come back to it. But I'm positive we lost a lot of people during that time. So, what's the advice? I mean, if you have enough money, you have to get the top talent. You have to make sure you're on reliable servers. You have to do good testing in terms of stress testing and making sure that you can handle that you're scalable. We're at this point completely Amazon Web Services, completely scalable, can add boxes as we need to, and put through millions of purchases every single day. So I don't know what other advice but to make good software, because it doesn't matter. I do think freemium has a real place. I mean, sometimes you can get across to somebody, especially with games, sometimes you can get across to somebody what the experience is like through the description and the screenshots, but for most cases you can't. And I think because Apple doesn't give you a real time-based demo period where you can use the entire app for a certain amount of time and then buy it or not, the freemium model is pretty much the only way, unless you're a big brand or happen to catch a wave, to get people to try it out, experience enough of it, hopefully very well put together application that works well. But you can't win either way, purchase or freemium, if your app isn't working quite right.
Tim, have we time for another question?
Yes, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pepe Meder. I'm from Pirelli. My question was regarding those new devices you can attach to your smartphone that would let you use your ATM cards for paying. Would you consider it as a way to bypass the monopoly of iTunes and Google Marketplace and selling out your products directly to the customer?
Well, bypass the monopoly of Google and Apple, that's kind of hard way to say it. As David said before, we see them more as partners and that as a marketing cost. So we are not trying to bypass them in that sense because they're terribly valuable to us. But of course, as a payment method, that's very interesting. And if that's something that the consumers really like and want and prefer to use, then of course we will be using that.
Yeah, I have to agree. As long as it's easy and simple. You're talking about something like the Square devices where you can actually swipe your card, or near field communication kind of. Yeah, if I've yet to see an example of that, be completely smooth. I mean, I love taking a picture of my check and sending it to the bank. That's kind of cool. But for the most part, I think that first of all, it has to be big enough that the users are going to pay for that device to add to the extra device to add to their phone or their tablet. I just can't imagine that being compelling enough for consumers to go through that extra step. And I'm not going to pay for something like the Square Reader to be sent to every one of our users. I don't think that could be profitable.
I mean, I think that the Square model is really for physical goods, isn't it? And they're obviously doing a brilliant job of bringing in small merchants who don't have credit card readers installed. But unless you guys are going to have retail partners, really, if you're selling digital products, then I suppose it's kind of unnecessary, isn't it?
It is, but there are some models out there with. So a lot of our books, for instance, Marvel's books, any of the books that they sell at $3.99 come with a digital copy. So there is that kind of crossover.
And also, maybe you could be selling cuddly toys in your theme parks.
Well, the beauty of selling cuddly toys in their app is that you don't have to pay Apple, right? So you can actually, so as long as you're selling physical goods, you don't have to pay the 30%, and you don't have to use their in-app purchase. You can take a credit card through an app like the Amazon app directly, as long as it's not for digital. So that's just Apple's rules. And certainly, like if we were going to upsell a big hardcover version of a comic, that could be all of ours plus minus the credit card charge.
Yeah, and we are promoting our toys through our app. So
can you buy them?
No, you have to access our webpage to that. So,
but you can buy them, sort of making a leap from the app to your webpage.
Yes, so we're promoting the traffic to our own webpage where they buy currently. So yeah.
And what sort of revenues are you doing on merchandise?
significant.
I had 30% of all revenue was
Well, yeah, significant revenue. I can't go to exact numbers.
I mean,
but
you see these shirts and dolls everywhere, right?
Yeah.
For Angry Birds. I mean,
well. Usually, it's the Rovio staff that are wearing them. I'm quite disappointed that you're not in a red sweatshirt today. Actually,
yeah, I was asked whether I'm wearing a hoodie today. So, but I tried to wear something red, but without the hoodie. So I think everybody has seen the hoodie already. So, trying to diversify a bit.
Do we have any more questions?
Questions? Yeah.
Yes, Nicolas Brézé from Amare Group, which is a media company. Would you share with us which is the split of turnover you made with Apple, Google, and other, and by yourself?
What's the split of revenue between the different OS platforms?
I don't think that they would appreciate us giving out too much information. That I'm happy to say that iOS is majority. The web has done very, very well for us, and Android does well. And the interesting thing about Android is that there's so many devices out there, even if they don't pay as often or as many people, the amount of devices is so tremendous that a smaller percentage can yield you a pretty good price.
Yeah. And from our side, as I said, our fan base is extremely important for us. So even though the direct revenue might not be up to par with others, but the amount of players we have on Google is just amazing. And then, as said before, we have other ways to monetize our fan base.
I'm just interested to know, David, as well. You're in the fortunate position that you have these two fantastic agreements with DC and Marvel. How do you cross over in terms of discovering new users using their physical products? Do you have adverts in the comics, or do you have a QR codes or anything like that?
We have quite a few agreements with different publishers where we have some advertising and apps. When you do what we did, which was both create a platform for yourself as a retailer and then also become a provider of that platform for others like Marvel and DC, the beauty of that for us was that, and this worked exactly the way we expected, Marvel and DC were going to be able to drive and be interested in driving a ton of their own traffic using their brands and characters and movies and all of that. And then some of those users would discover that, oh, I can also read these in a multi-publisher application and read a bunch of other publishers while I still get my Marvel and DC fix and move to the Comixology app. So everybody's really happy because we're all making money on every side of it. And yet we've empowered publishers to be able to feel very confident about creating a space for the Marvel fan to function and enjoy themselves, while we got to take advantage of their branding while we built our own brand, and then now we can turn around and support them as well in our app as it becomes kind of the focal point for a lot of the purchasing. But later today, you'll see we'll be number 1, number 2, or number 3 in the U.S. in the top grossing iPad apps. Marvel will probably be 7 or 8, and DC will probably be 15. So they very much continue to grow on their own. So it's been an interesting way to do it.
They have their own app store within an app store. They have their own app that's a store,
right,
Marvel and DC.
that we run.
But wouldn't it make sense for them to, with their massive brand values and everything, for them to get you to white label a store that they run themselves?
Well, so we white label the store. They don't want to they don't want to bother with putting in data into iTunes and. There's a tremendous amount of drudgery and work to get 30,000 SKUs into Amazon, Android, Google Play, and Apple. I mean, we weekly have to put up a ton of stuff. Not to mention we do all of the what we call digital editing of their mobile versions, so that they flow really well on iOS and on the iPhone and small phones. So yeah, there's just a tremendous amount of value we bring to it by running it for them. But yeah, they control the prices and they're in charge of their stores in essence.
Obviously in the physical world they're not running shops, and they're not doing it in the online world. So there's nothing to suggest that they would want to do that in mobile.
Right.
Okay, we'll have to stop now. Tim, thank you. I leave you the conclusion if you want to conclude.
Okay, well, fantastic, guys, for some really brilliant information there. So please show your appreciation for these two guys. How long have we got for lunch?